1. The first thing I noticed when I was sleeping in one morning, my boyfriend was already awake playing video games in the living room. 1. The first thing I noticed when I was sleeping in one morning, my boyfriend was already awake playing video games in the living room. I was woken up to a woman's voice that sounded like a very soft and gentle voice. It also sounded like the woman was very nervous. It sounded urgent. She just said, "No, no, 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 no," each no sounding more pronounced. I woke up very confused and assumed that my boyfriend had a guest over. It sounded like a disagreement, so I quickly got out of bed and went to see what was wrong. I swear, on the way to the living room, I was still hearing mumbling voices in a conversation. I'm sure you guessed, there was no one there. When I talked to my boyfriend, he said there wasn't any voice. His video games were plugged into his headset, so it wasn't the TV. I've had experiences with hallucinations when falling asleep and waking up in my younger years. Although it had been years since that last happened, I assumed it was just that, and thought nothing more of it. That was until my boyfriend started experiencing things as well. A couple nights later, he woke up to the same voice. He described it as an older woman's voice that was soft and gentle, and it said, "No, don't worry about it, I've got it." It again sounded clear, as if he was just having a conversation with someone in the room. This, somehow, scares me more. He said he was waking up, but fully awake when he heard it. At first, he thought it was me, but I was still asleep. He shook me awake because he was so unnerved. The scariest thing was maybe a couple weeks after that. My boyfriend had gotten up to pee in the middle of the night, and when he came back, I was sitting up and looking at him. Or more accurately, my side of the bed had a figure sitting up looking at him, but it wasn't me. It took my boyfriend a moment to realize he could also see me laying in my normal spot. It was like this figure was sitting up on top of me. Someone else was in my spot too, just staring at my boyfriend. He turned on the light, waking me up, but when he did, the figure vanished. He was very shaken up then too. I always hear noises when I'm home alone. We've had paranormal experiences in the past, but not like this. We smudge every time something scary happens and things lighten up for a couple days. But considering there was nothing for the first few months we lived here, I'm nervous this is escalating. Any advice and feedback is appreciated. Some things to note. I have lived in apartments most of my life, and I know what hearing your neighbors is like. We hear them all the time. This voice is not that, I'm sure of that. I can't explain how disorienting it's been. It feels like I'm in a conversation. I just don't remember how I got there. It is definitely a very close voice, not next door. I definitely want to talk to it next time I have an experience, but I also want to do some research on the apartment building. I also forgot to mention that our landlord moved out very quickly and wouldn't explain why. When I asked, he said, personal reasons. He still lives in the neighborhood, so I wonder if maybe he was experiencing the same things we are. He's kind of awful and behind on our repairs, so I'm not going to ask him to verify. Thank you again, everyone. 2. Picture it. Middlesex, Maryland, 2007. I was 24 at the time and had just recently moved into a brick townhome, which was located in a cul-de-sac with my Uncle Eric. We had managed to get a pretty cheap rent due to it being a fixer-upper, and we knew the owner through certain channels of our church. Supposedly, the owner, who was a pastor, had inherited the house from his father, who had coincidentally died in the house years before we arrived. So my uncle and I went through the painstaking process of slowly renovating whatever needed doing over a course of several months. Several months later, after we had officially moved in, pretty much everything was going as smoothly as could be expected, except for maybe certain odds and ends that did eventually get sorted out. It was when I began dating my ex that things within the house became more interesting. So, November 2007, I began bringing my ex to the house for, well, would you believe me if I said pajama parties? Yeah, I didn't think so, but you get the idea. At any rate, it was during one of these pajama parties that the latent weirdness began showing its ugly head, as it were. I'd been laying in my bed, watching TV or some such thing. This was before the glorious age of touch-screen cell phones, and my ex had gone to the bathroom. Here she comes, barging into the bedroom with a crazed look in her eyes, doing what I do, I responded with an arched eyebrow and said without looking at her, "Everything come out okay?" Granted, my sense of humor was lacking any taste due to the privacy of the situation, but her reaction told me volumes of what had happened. "Stop fucking around, Rob. Someone just called my name when I was walking back from the bathroom." I frowned. "Someone called your name from outside?" I was honestly thinking of some shady characters who had kind of stalked her in the past. "No, while I was in the hallway. It was like they whispered my name loudly in my ear," she explained, clearly much more emotionally excited than she reasonably needed to be. This got my attention immediately. I had always wanted to have a ghost experience, and here was my chance. Because I'm a moron, I retrieved my knife to use it in a ghost fight. Yeah, I know, not my brightest moment. Don't judge me. I swung the door open swiftly, semi-charged out into the darkened hall, knife at the ready, as if that would have done anything, and saw absolutely nothing. I would be lying if I said I wasn't disappointed. In my mind's eye, I envisioned some type of heroic, atypical alpha male kind of battle, where I would have somehow tackled the ghost, struggled with the intruding spectre, and maybe, possibly, gone over the nearby railing whilst in glorious exchange. Obviously, no such thing happened. I came back to reality, and went on to check the other dark rooms to ensure the continued integrity of the house was intact. It was. And so I went back into the bedroom and reported to her what I had or hadn't found. She was still shaken up, but she accepted that whatever had happened was of substance, that very little could be done about. These strange whispering voice events had occurred a few more times over the months, and I reacted just as vigilantly as I had the initial time, which resulted in the same outcome. Fast forward to summer 2008. My sister needed a place to stay, and she had arrived very suddenly one day as I was arriving home from work. She and my 2 young nephews would be sharing a room together, a room which was located behind my room. Our room's closet shared the same wall, a fact that will come into play later on. From the very first instant, I had somewhat suspected that the former owner, being a religious man, his ghost or spirit or what have you, was not at all pleased of the fact that my ex and I had been fornicating within his former home for months on end. Now here was my sister moving in suddenly, both sons born out of wedlock, which I'm sure just tickled the former deceased owner's fancy something fierce. At the time, I had this thought only in passing, more of an inclination, really. However, my theory was soon to be proven correct. One night, several weeks after my sister had settled in, my ex-sister and I were having some adult beverages. We were gathered in my bedroom for some reason. For better than an hour we were just shooting the shit, sipping lightly at our drinks, enjoying each other's company. And I personally was simply thrilled as tickled shit that the 2 females weren't reacting to each other in that needlessly violent way women tend to have from time to time. In the midst of a full-blown jovial conversation, which for whatever reason ceased immediately, a split second before an interruption of noise boomed from what seemed to be the next room over, which was my sister's room. Both my sister and ex looked at me with wide what-the-fuck eyes, while simultaneously and nigh telepathically sending me a message to go please check it out. Without hesitation, I was up from where I had been sitting in the chair in the corner of the room. As I man-walked, yes, that's right, man-walked as a thing towards my sister's room, I thought that one of my young nephews had fallen out of the bed. However, when I gently opened the door, both of the little guys were sound asleep, seemingly having heard nothing of the in-house sonic boom-like noise that happened mere seconds prior. I mean, this noise would be the equivalent of someone dropping a 25-pound weight from the height of 5 or 6 feet. Anyone would have woken in that close proximity to such a racket. But no, they hadn't so much as stirred. I looked about, checking to see if anything in the room or closet, the same closet my room closet shared a wall with, from which the intense boom seemed to have originated from, but nothing was seemingly out of place. So I walked back to my room, somewhat dumbfounded and yet secretly knowing that it was the same asshole presence that had made itself known to my ex several times before in the darkened hallway. I told my sister and ex what I had found, or not found, once again. They gave each other wide-eyed looks, and whatever small buzz the 3 of us had was then definitely evaporated by the unscheduled nuisance. We were on the 2nd floor of the house, and there was no 3rd floor for anything like that noise to have come from. The walls on either side of our house were cinder block layered with brick. so no loudness from any of the neighbors would have been heard so deafeningly clearly as we had heard. To this day, that incident was always considered unknown at best and ghost-related at worst. Several months later, everyone moved out because the current owner wanted to perform a complete renovation and then eventually sell the property. 3. This has never happened to me before, and has never happened since, but I am heavily disturbed. This happened at the end of the first quarantine, about late July, early August. IKEA had said that they would be accepting a mass of customers, and my mother said she needed to go get some stuff we had previously not been able to get. At the time, I lived with my mother, brother, nan, and grandfather. They all get up early, so they wanted to go as well. I, however, wanted to stay in bed because the line would have been about 2 hours long. When the time came for my family to leave the house, my mother came into my room and told me that they were going to IKEA. I, being half asleep, just agreed with everything and didn't think much of it. But something felt off. I had that gut feeling, as if someone was standing over me. But now that I think of it, it can't have been my mother because I could clearly hear her outside my door. They left the house and I was left alone for about 4 hours. For the first 2.5, I just played on my PS4 with my friend. I then heard the distinct sound of my front door being unlocked from the inside. The outside and inside make different sounds. I thought this was odd because I had one headphone off my ear just to hear when they got home, but it was still creepy how it was clearly being unlocked from the inside. I heard no noise for the next few minutes, so I went down to say hello, but the door was still locked, and still no one had got home. After about 10 minutes, I was still playing on the PS4 while telling my friend about it, when I heard my bedroom door open and felt the wind that it normally makes when it opens. I turned, but still no one was there. Now I was really starting to get freaked out. I thought it might have been from the lack of sleep that I was getting at the time, or just my imagination. Nothing happened for the next hour. Because I am a junk food-loving teenager, I constantly was going downstairs to get drinks and snacks. But the last time I did, it was the part that left me scared shitless. For some reason, I always have the feeling that someone is always behind me when going up or down stairs, and I started to walk back up them. As I reached to the top of the stairs, I have to look down a hallway to my left, but I could see my door over the ledge before finally getting up the stairs. That was when I saw me, at my door, slightly cracked open with me there just staring. It had the facial structure of me, the same hair, but the facial features weren't mine. I ran out of the house and didn't go back until my parents got home. Most of you probably won't believe this because it sounds like a common fake story, but it was there, clear as day. And that is why I'm scared of being home alone. Too many unexplained things have happened in my house when I'm home alone. Has left a scar in my brain, but this one sticks out. This one is the worst. This one is burned into my memory. 4. My family decided to take a vacation in a zone near the coast in a big cottage. We came there with some friends to spend the weekend and were without any houses around and 4 to 5 kilometers away from the nearest town. When we first arrived and entered the house, I immediately felt a strange sensation from it. I thought it could be suggestion of being in a place that I didn't know, so I just ignored it. But when the night came, everything started to get strange. I slept in the same room as my sister, but she fastly fell asleep, so she didn't realize what was happening. When I was finally getting to sleep, I suddenly hear 3 hard knocks on the door, so I instantly got up from the bed and came near the door to see what was happening. I opened the door, and there was nothing behind. I thought it could be our friends, so I sent them a text message saying that they should stop joking because we were trying to sleep. Anyways, I felt like they wouldn't stop there, so I waited close to the door until I heard another knock and tried to catch them in the act. And then I received a text message from one of my friends saying that they were in the upper room trying to sleep too, so they don't know what I was talking about. Anyway, I decided to stay near the door just in case they were lying, and suddenly another violent knock sounds again, so I immediately opened the door, just to see that there was nothing there. Neither my friends or anything else. In that moment I knew something was happening in that house. I tried to sleep, but my head was trying to understand what was happening. The next day I talked about this to my parents, and they said we could move to another room in the upper floor, but they didn't actually believe me. I was 14 at that time, so they just thought it was my imagination. Then the night came and I was ready. I thought that if something happened again, I would wake up my sister so she can confirm that later. The hours passed and I was in bed with a little light turned on. Then suddenly I started to hear strong hits. But this time they didn't come from the door, they came from the wardrobe next to us, so I immediately woke up my sister, and she was terrified. The hits didn't stop, and the violence of them were so hard that the door from the wardrobe was moving like something was trying to get out of there. I said that I would try to open it to see what was trapped inside, and my sister was begging me, "Don't do it," because she was absolutely in shock. But anyways, I opened it, and in that same moment the sound stopped, making the room come back to a complete silence. She decided to wake up her parents because she was afraid that this thing was there to harm us somehow. It was an awful situation, and we never came back again to that house. 5. Please be aware the following story, while containing no graphic depiction, does contain references to sexual assault. Okay, so just for context, my boyfriend had been living in our old place for about 10 years, and I moved in and lived there for about 5. I always felt a presence in the house, but over time, whatever it was targeted me over my boyfriend. If he's someone asking me shit over my headphones, when I'd ask my boyfriend what the hell he was talking about, he would have no idea what I was talking about. I used to have a lot of sleep paralysis in our bedroom. I'm talking being sexually assaulted by someone unseen, etc. And there was one night where I was petrified in the bedroom, so much so that I moved to the lounge room to sleep because of that. The spare room had some weird energy. We had a camera set up in there, while we were kittens sitting for a mate. We also had 2 cats, and apparently it was better to let them get to know the different events before we commingled them, so we had the lounge room door shut between them, initially. Anyways, back to the camera. My boyfriend said once that he thought he'd seen static-like figures walking across the screen in the spare room. So there was things like that. It all came to a head when we started packing to move to another property. During the final 2 or 3 days before we left, I started having the sleep paralysis again, which had rarely happened since I left our bedroom for the couch. Once again, I was being sexually assaulted and violently choked. I was pushed and scratched. I have a massive scar down my arm now. The cat started staring and hissing at random empty spots. Tempers were flaring. I'm sure that this was stress from moving, being realistic. The final night, we had mostly gotten all the big stuff out, and really only had some leftover bits and pieces to do. We were both starving, so we decided to order a pizza, and while we were waiting, my boyfriend had a shower. During that time, I heard a fucking loud moan. Now, the house was pretty much empty, so the sound reverberated off the walls. I thought maybe it was my boyfriend in the shower, so when I came out, I made him try and replicate the moan in the shower, with the water running, etc., to try and debunk it. He did, and that was not the sound I heard. I asked him to make a moaning sound in the lounge and kitchen area where I was, and he did. It wasn't the same moan I'd heard, but it captured the exact pitch, etc., so that weirded me out. A couple of hours later, we were making a final trip to the van before shutting the door for the night, and we both heard some, canned laughter and some kind of talking from a TV show in the distance. It's 3 a.m. by this stage, and I guarantee no one was watching anything that early and loudly in the morning, and as soon as it started, it stopped once we moved away from the house. I had to run back in one final time, and it started and stopped again. Has anyone had any similar experiences, or any idea what it could have been? Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 5 True Paranormal Stories, episode 249. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. If you enjoyed the video, then please do like and subscribe. Also, apologies for the echo in the video currently. Bought a new bed recently. Finally got it put together yesterday. So glad I did. My body just knew it was a more comfortable experience. I didn't get a full sleep last night for just general health reasons, but the sleep I did get was much more restful overall. But unfortunately, the old bed was a 4-poster bed, so it had curtains on it. And that, even when they were open, did a remarkable job in sound dampening. They're gone now. So I'm going to have to figure out some other solution. I'm probably going to get the acoustic panels I've been looking at, so I might see if I can get them ordered this weekend. I'll just go ahead. I think, yes, Teespring revenue should cover some of them, and I'll take the rest out of my savings because it's got to be done. Because we can't keep working with that. But we had a video to do today, so a video we did. All right, and possibly some sort of wall hanging. Something kind of hippie-ish, like retro 60s vibe, that's what I'm looking at. Maybe pushing it to the 70s a little bit if we're being fancy. Right, now before we wrap up the video, I do have a birthday shout-out to do. This birthday shout-out goes to Richard. Your wife Angela sent a request in. She wishes you a very happy birthday. She doesn't say how old you are. We'll assume you're turning 22 again or some such. Well, I hope whatever you have planned for your Friday, it's a good one. I hope there is cake and alcohol, and if you're not into alcohol, I hope there's cake and no alcohol. If you're not into cake, then I forgive you. And before we go, happy birthday. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Richard. Happy birthday to you. All right, and I think we're going to wrap things up there for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.